Look, I know it's the wrong Spider-Person outfit, but this is all I currently own. Well, there's a new Spider-Man movie out. You know what that means? Well, first it means I have to review it. I did that. Break Room of Geeks. Check it out if you haven't already. But that also means I gotta rank these suckers. All 9 of them. The 9 theatrically released Spider-Man films. I'm not dealing with any of the bundled together of TV episodes like that were sold as live action or anything weird, from other countries. I'm not, none of that. You know what the main films are. That's what we're talking about. Why waste time? Let's get right to it with number 9, Spider-Man 3. Look, I know that this has gotten a bit of a critical reappraisal in more recent times. There's a number of YouTubers who I know and like who will defend this film, and I'm not even going to say that they're wrong, but I still really don't think it works. Like at all. If it works for you, fantastic. It just does not work for me. And a large part of that just has to do with what a major drop-off it was from the previous films. I mean, there's the stuff everybody talks about, like Venom and how it makes Peter really unlikable. And like, you can defend that as part of the narrative, and that Peter being cool is gonna be cringy because Peter Parker doesn't know what cool actually is. Like, I get that. You can defend that, but that doesn't make it any more fun for me to watch. I still don't like watching it. But I don't even think Venom's that big a problem. I actually really can't stand Sandman. I hate the retcon to tie Flint Marko in to the death of Uncle Ben. And I also just think he's not a very captivating villain, like at all. And they wrap up Harry's stuff really haphazardly. It's kind of a mess of a movie. And even trying to go back and rewatch it, like there's bits here and there, there's performances that are good. When Sandman like pulls himself together for the first time, that's gold. But like, overall as a whole, no. Just no. Number 8, The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I know most people would consider this to be the better of the 2 Andrew Garfield-led movies. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that. It's just that if you were going to ask me which one I would rather rewatch, I'd more readily rewatch the second one. I'll get into some of the reasons why when I talk about that one. As for this one, it's not terrible. It's not honestly, Spider-Man 3 is the only one I personally find kind of painful to watch. And a lot of that just has to do with my own aversion to cringe-style humor, which it leans on kind of heavily. It doesn't hurt me to watch it, but there isn't really that much that's exceptional about it. It's just good enough. It's got a Spider-Man look that is good enough. It has special effects that are good enough. It has a story that's good enough. It has a villain that's good enough. Really, the only thing that's exceptionally good is, the chemistry between Peter and Gwen Stacy, and Andrew Garfield, I think, especially when he's in the suit and quipping, is good in the role.
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
But most of the elements, they're just fine. There is very little that raises this up. Number 7, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And the reason I put this one slightly higher is there are some things in here that I do think are genuinely good, or at least play really well for me. First of all, the suit looks freaking great. It looks awesome. I like the dubstep stuff with Electro. Is it corny? Yeah! But I do still kind of like it for some bizarre reason. As much as like it hasn't been properly built up to, as an isolated scene, Death of Gwen Stacy's pretty well done. And I know I'm the only person on the planet with this opinion, and I can't really defend it, but I like the Rhino, and I love the ending. And when I say the ending, I don't mean the Death of Gwen Stacy. I mean the very ending. Ending with Spidey squaring off to getting back into the groove and doing what he knows he needs to do after tragedy. I think that's a great ending. There's a whole lot else here that is a mess. Harry comes out of absolutely nowhere, and they try and well, they basically try and have him pay off the way that the original 3 films tried to have him pay off, and they couldn't even pull that off, and they're just introducing him here for the first time. This really can't pull it off. And so much of it is so transparently trying to set up other movies that it does pull you out of it. And Electro is okay, at least once he gets his powers. Original flavor Max Dillon is, again, it's the cringe humor thing. But there are at least some things that I can point to and go, that bit, I genuinely like that bit. Number 6, Spider-Man Far From Home. This is really a personal taste one. And it's hard to nail down exactly why this fell so short for me after Homecoming, but it just wasn't clicking. Again, it felt like, you know what I think by and large, it felt like a much more manufactured situation. Homecoming felt like a very organic situation. If Peter's going to be Spider-Man, this is the kind of stuff that is going to happen around him that he's going to have to deal with. He's going to have to figure out, what sacrifices am I going to make to my personal life to try and help people? How am I going to balance a social life and school and this? How is this all going to work? And most of the conflict that came out of that in that film felt organic and natural, whereas Far From Home just feels like the hands of the writers and the directors manipulating everything into place, and it just didn't flow right. It's hard for me to nail down anything other than that. It's just a bunch of things that just feel a little off, like they're not clicking as well. If I saw this in isolation, I'd probably like it better, but as a step down from the one that came before, a little bit like Spider-Man 3, if I'd seen it in isolation, I might have liked it better than if it hadn't been preceded by a much better movie. So, yeah. Now, I will say this. Far From Home is the last one that I have serious caveats about. From here on out, good stuff coming. Number 5, Spider-Man, the original. Tobey Maguire, not my favorite Spidey. He's not. He never will be. But for the kind of Peter Parker that this is, for the way, because Peter Parker can be done a number of ways. He's been done a number of ways over the years. And for the era of Spider-Man that the movie wished to evoke and how Peter was in that era, he was a solid pick. As much as I don't care for the Green Goblin suit, you can't knock Willem Dafoe. All the supporting cast is spot on. Oh my God. Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben. Oh God. He's the best. He breaks my heart and he's the best. And it's just such solid working. You need to remember the idea of a bright, flashy, colorful, slightly silly superhero film. That wasn't really a thing. This is more a spiritual successor to the original Christopher Reeve Superman than to anything that had come out close to it. Because the Batman movies had gotten silly, but in a way that nobody cared for. And it had started that franchise in super dark. X-Men had happened a couple years before, and it was just really black. And there's reasons to like that movie, but this was such a bolt of fresh air. And most of what I think those of us who like the MCU consider to be the strengths of the MCU, this is the template that they're following. This was the film that said, no, it won't look silly for us to do a comic accurate suit on our hero. It won't be too cartoonish or comic booky, whatever that even means, to tell the origin how it really was in the comics. We can translate this in a way that works for film without having to completely reshape it or be ashamed of what it was on the comic book page. That came from this. The original Superman did it first, but no other film had done it since then. And this really kicked off and was the proof of concept that this was going to be the future of superhero films. And granted, I went on a little bit more about its legacy than its merits as a film, but it matters. Okay, we're into the top 4, and I got to tell you, number 4, number 3, number 2 are really close. Hair's breadth away between these next 3. But the way that I'm choosing to order them today Number 4, Spider-Man No Way Home. It's big, it's meta, it's bonkers. I'm not going to get into any of the spoilers, it's too new. But for everything that it's doing, for how long it is, this shouldn't work. But it does. It works really well. And it's a really satisfying film. It is satisfying as the closer for this little currently, maybe we'll get more Spider-Man films in the future, but this currently self-contained trilogy of the Tom Holland Spider-Man, I would like to see more from him. There's no reason we can't get more, but his contract is up unless they negotiate a new one. And if this is his final outing, it's a dang solid finish. I can't get into specifics. I wish I could. You got to check out the review if you actually want to hear my thoughts on spoilery stuff, the one that I linked to earlier. So for right now, just know it's a good movie. It's a good time. And I really dug it. Number 3, Spider-Man 2. Oh man, as good as that first Spider-Man was, everything was better here. I love Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, but you know what? Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, gold. Absolute solid gold. Tobey Maguire feels a little bit more at ease in the part here, as much as this very tightly wound version of Peter is ever going to be at ease. All the things that were good last time are still good, but the action scenes feel better and more self-assured. The set pieces feel bigger. The stakes feel more personal. The danger feels more immediate. Everything has just been turned up that little bit from a really good first movie, and virtually everything in this one is better than that. It was such a step up. It's still good. Still really good. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. This is on the strength of a number of things. The two big ones being, I really love Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and I freaking love Michael Keaton as the Vulture. He is perfect. And it's a brilliant reimagining of the character. It is just, and like all the other stuff. This younger version of Aunt May, which on paper I was like, that's a dumb idea. I love it. This version of MJ who is slightly sullen and like borderline gothy almost, at least in attitude, if not style. It's like, that shouldn't work. It does. I love it. Ned is ridiculous. I should find him annoying. He's comic relief. I love him. All these things are just perfectly put into place, and it has good judicious use of Iron Man on top of that. And so that's a bonus. Honestly, I remember first going to this, I was like, is he going to overtake this movie and suck the oxygen out of the room? No, he's here to support and buoy Peter because this is Peter's story, and it never forgets that. Ha 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 ha. It was so good. But it should not surprise people what number 1 is. And as close as I said, numbers 2, 3, and 4 were, like super close. I could reorder those 3 any number of ways and still be pretty happy. But number 1, Into the SpiderVerse, is goddamn perfect. It's perfect. It's one of those things where, it's funny when I see films sometimes where like there's just little tiny things that like maybe I'm like, maybe that little bit. What's funny is the effects of time. Because one of two things will happen. Either those little things will, with rewatches or reflection, bother me more and more and more and more and more. And I will like the film less as time goes on, where I may have enjoyed it on initial viewing. Or time will simply gloss over anything that I had a slight niggling doubt about before, and now I see nothing but beauty. I know I had tiny issues with that film when I saw it. I can barely remember what they are now, and I don't have them anymore. Miles Morales is an excellent Spider-Man in this film. And the way they're able to bring in all these other Spider characters, have everybody there, and never, ever lose focus on this as Miles' story. Even as other characters also have arcs, Peter B. Parker especially, but it still keeps its focus. This is about Miles. This is Miles' journey, and the freaking triumph of him putting on his own suit and swinging about in that for the first time. It makes me stand up and cheer and pump my freaking fist every time. It is so good. And the animation is incredible. The villains are great. As much as I gushed about Alfred Molina, this is probably my favorite version of Doc Ock that has actually ever been done. Comics, animation, or film. It's just amazing, this thing. This should not work on just about every level. This many characters. First film in a franchise. Like, for as much bonkers stuff as went on in No Way Home, that was a third film. That was building on existing stuff. This, it is building on a certain amount of assumed foreknowledge of what Spider-Man is, but it still covers the bases even if you don't really know. And it does so much so tightly, so seamlessly, fluidly, just smooth. Just, hey.
Hey.
That's how smooth it is. Oh, I don't know if I made my point or undermined it with that. I'm not going to worry about it. We'll wrap it up there. What's your order? Or at the very least, what's your favorite? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Like, share, and subscribe. I have a Patreon. It's how I pay my bills and keep this whole operation up and running. Rewards for every tier. There's also a link in the description. Links to other stuff as well. Twitch stream, Twitter, various social media things, plus my P.O. box. You know, if you want to send something Spider-Man themed so I don't have to only wear the Ghost Spider outfit. I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but, you know, don't worry about it either. Because ultimately, you are the council, and I only run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. None of this would have been possible without my supporters over on Patreon. In particular, I want to thank Robin Powell, Raven McBain, Tracy Scrabbit, Vincent Paul Bartolucci, Robin Moore, and Shayla Gourlay. If you'd like to hear me possibly mispronounce your name, maybe consider looking at the reward tiers over on the Patreon. But either way, don't worry about it too much. Take care of yourself.